Hey there, and welcome to episode number 3 of Equipping the Family. I'm JD, this is Bethany. Glad to have you along with us this week. So over the last few weeks, guys, we kind of tackled a few different questions about when it comes to family discipleship. We thought that really kind of defined what family discipleship was in our first episode, and then we looked at why is family discipleship important in our last episode. And we promised this episode won't be quite as long as the last one, but there was quite a bit to talk about when it comes to the why of family discipleship. And so today what we really want to look at is, what does family discipleship look like?
Right. I think like we say these big words, but like, what is that? I'm one of those, I need to know what that looks like in my everyday walk. Like, give me examples or give me like something to shoot for. Like that broad term almost just overwhelms me.
Yeah. What does that kind of that really gets down to the practical side of it? It's real easy to talk in theory of well, this is what family discipleship needs to be. This is but what does that look like? How do we break that down? And of course, we want to give and kind of what we're going to talk about today is going to be a little bit of the theory, and then some of the practical, and not the specifics, because I think it's up to every family, kind of how they how they do it, when they do it. Obviously, the rhythms in your family are different than the rhythms in our family.
And they change with seasons.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that we'll kind of develop this good rhythm, and then school starts or a sport starts or things like this change. And it's like, okay, back to the drawing board, let's revamp. But the important thing is that we do revamp. Like, we don't just like be the thing that it throws to the wayside. It's that we value family discipleship so much that in any season we make it a priority.
Yeah. Even if that involves of having to cut something else out, or shift other things around and give less time to those things to make sure that we still have that time for family discipleship, which and trust me, we're with you in this. It's not easy.
Definitely not.
I mean, it's like starting anything, whether it's starting to work out or it's starting a new diet or it's starting a sport. It's just about getting that time and making it a priority and really making it become a habit.
Sure.
And that's the big thing. For us, is making that time set aside of doing it week after week or day after day to where it becomes just part of
what
that
we
routine.
do.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just like you said with a diet or exercise, there'll be days you mess up and there'll be days that you fail, but you don't just totally give up. As you start better. There'll be weeks that we're so crazy busy that we've only gotten one night where we talked about, or whatever, but the next week starting again, full force. And so I just feel like it's almost like this clawing against the busyness to say, this is a priority for our family, and we're going to do it whatever it takes.
Yeah. And we've noticed that as we've kind of made it a priority and we set these routines, that even our kids are the ones that sometimes will remind us of it. I mean, the other night we were getting ready for bed and it was late, and my son looked at me and goes, "Dad, can we do night prayers?" And I'd forgot to, for me, it was like, it's time for bed. We've been I don't remember, it was either soccer practice or church, and we'd been there all night, all day, and it was just long. And honestly, it slipped my mind because I was thinking about the next day's things, and he remembered that. And then the night after that, they had said, "Hey, we haven't done our family devotion time yet." And so they notice those things. They're going to remember those things, especially if you make it fun and exciting. They're going to be the ones that say, "Hey, we need to do this," even on those times that you forget.
Sure, absolutely.
So what does family discipleship look like? And we've kind of come up with, I say come up with, we have stolen this, we have taken this from multiple sources. This is definitely not original material out there, but kind of what we've gleaned from a group of different sources is really kind of 4 things. And the first one is example or modeling.
Sure.
That family discipleship really starts with us setting the example for our kids.
Right. I mean, How many times have you said something or done something that you didn't even realize your kids saw, and then they're repeating those words or whatever you did the next day? Like, our kids pick up on what we do. So if it's something like, if we're making a daily time in the Word a priority, I think our kids will see that. And sometimes I know, like with our daily Bible readings, we want to do it at a time when the kids are off at school or they've gone to bed or we get up early, which all those are good because I think we do need that quiet time away at times. But also making time that we're in the Word ourselves in front of our kids. Even if it's a little bit more chaotic that day, I think it's so important for them to see us in the Word with their eyes and not just, hear that we do it. I know that was a huge thing for you and your mom, right?
Yeah, I mean that was I still remember to this day many a morning of walking out of my room in the mornings, and there was my mom in her chair with her Bible and with her journal, reading the Bible, spending time writing her prayers, and that's something that's always stuck with me, and it's stuck with me till today. But even in corporate worship, I think it's important for us as parents to occasionally to take our kids with us to corporate worship. I know during the COVID-19 stay-at-home order, and even when we came back to church, and we didn't open up Next Gen Ministries, and so our kids were coming with us to church, and it was difficult. It was hard.
Sure.
They struggled even with the shorter services, but I think it's important on occasion, and obviously I think there's a huge place for age group ministries. Obviously, you have people who are very talented at communicating to kids and the preschoolers, and I think those definitely have their place. But on occasion, I think it's extremely important for kids to see mom and dad worship, for them to know that's really what church is about, is that spending that quality time with fellow believers, worshiping the Lord. And so the first thing there is example. The second one is the daily and the weekly times. I think when we talk about family discipleship, this is kind of the first thing that pops into people's heads.
Right, of what it looks like, of just that intentional set out time. And maybe you call it devotional time or prayer time. And it can be, like I said, like JD said, it looks different for every family or whatever rhythms you're in, of whether you do it once a week, y'all come together and read the Word, or maybe y'all nightly do a quick little devotion or read the Word together before bed. There's just so many different ways that it can look. It doesn't have to be 2 hours a day. It doesn't even have to be every day, but just a rhythm to where you are regularly as a family setting aside intentional time to be in the Word together.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be this really long thing. I mean, for us, a lot of nights it's like 5 minutes or less, just because we choose to do that at a certain time, and sometimes the kids are locked in and we get a little extra time, and some days they are just, you're getting minutes with them focused. And so, but it's about setting that time, that intentional time aside, and really that time is about spending time in the Word together, and spending time in prayer. There's some great resources that we'll share some of those, but the biggest thing, in fact, Lifeway Research put out a statistic that the number one influencer over long-term spiritual health is consistent, regular Bible reading. And so that's kind of that priority for those times, whether it's daily or it's weekly. And so there's a ton of resources, and we'll kind of look over some of that in coming episodes.
And I think with this too is, like, sometimes that can be the overwhelming thing. If maybe you haven't been in the Word long or feel like you don't have a good knowledge of the Word, I think one easy way to start is just follow through with what maybe the pastor's going over on Sunday. If he's going through the book of James, y'all go through to as a family that week. Whatever your kids may be learning in Sunday school, take that and talk about it throughout the week. It's just finding a place to start, and get into the Word. You don't have to be a Bible scholar. It can be learning together as a family unit.
Yeah. And I know a lot of churches, our church does, we send home a weekly sheet with the kids. It doesn't always make it there, but we try to make sure it makes it to mom and dad's hands. That has what we talked about that week. It has the scripture on it and that kind of stuff. We try to get that out into parents' hands, and so be sure to take advantage of all of that. So example, set an example, modeling daily and weekly times. And then the third one's a spontaneous discipleship. And that's the stuff that's just looking for those moments and those opportunities during the day, during the week, just to take things and kind of turn them to spiritual conversations, taking those little things that the kids will bring up,
Right.
and using that time, making the most of the time that we have to turn those conversations to things of the Lord.
Right. And a lot of times these are conversations in the car after school or maybe at the dinner table where someone brings up something and we just turn it into a spiritual conversation. And sometimes it's, real quick, and other times it's a little bit longer. I've had conversations with our daughter sometimes and I'm like so excited. She's asking me about prayer and I'm going. And 2 seconds later, she's like, oh, look at the red balloon outside. But just taking those opportunities to maybe turn the conversation to a spiritual one. And I think that is really important because, just like we would want our kids to know that they can come to us if they're being bullied at school or they've had a hard day or they're struggling with something, we want to have that openness and conversation. We also want that in their spiritual walk. So to make a spiritual conversation a norm so that when they have questions about the faith or, they have questions about what they learned at church, that they know that this is something I can go and talk to mom and dad about because we regularly talk about the Lord together. But if a spiritual conversation never comes up more than maybe, well, what did you learn at church today? I think it's hard for kids to know that this is where you go. I know even as adults, we both go to our parents for spiritual advice and wisdom because we know that that's an open place where we can discuss things because it was a norm in our life.
Yeah, and it can sometimes seem kind of a weird thing. Like I know I had people in my life growing up who, boy, I mean, like every conversation, they were able to turn it to spiritual things, and I always thought that was kind of strange until I really began to take my spiritual life serious, and I began to reflect back and I look at those people and go, wow, they were so in tune with the Lord that they could see Him at work in every situation. So that's what we want our kids to understand is that that spiritual things are not reserved for Sunday mornings or for Wednesday nights or for these set aside times. It's living the Christian life is a moment by moment. It is an hourly thing. It is a constantly chasing after the Lord.
Sure, and it may be awkward at first. It may be these conversations don't come naturally, but it's just one of those fight against that. Don't let the awkwardness of it be something that deters you from doing it. It's not worth it. Like if you're putting family discipleship as a priority, we have to fight against the awkwardness and the finding time. It's all these things. We have to understand how important it is.
Mm-hmm. And so the last thing is to celebrate the big wins, and that could be a number of things. Whether that's hey, we're going to set a goal of having family discipleship time for this entire month, and then that last time of the month you have a party because hey, look, we got it all 4 weeks, guys, way to go. Or it's that when that child gives their heart to the Lord, or when you see them spending that time with the Lord by themselves, of just celebrating that, making a big deal about it.
Yeah, I think so often, especially in our kids' spiritual walk, of course, we're so excited when they choose to follow the Lord and follow through with believers' baptism. We should celebrate that, party over it, make it a huge deal. But I think also, like, as our kids mature, there should be times in their spiritual walk you should see growth. I think back to my spiritual walk and I think about the times of, okay, well, at this time in my life was where the Lord really gave me a desire to be in His Word. And at this time in His life is where I really understand His holiness. Whatever that may be, that we celebrate those milestones of maturing in the faith just as much as we celebrate them coming to know the Lord. Because both are so important. That first step, but then also that daily step of coming to know the Lord deeper and deeper each day.
Yeah. And by doing that, guys, what we help to do is put those spiritual markers, those spiritual benchmarks that our kids can look back on, that they can reflect back on. That's easy for them to pull back and remember, oh yeah, I remember that time. When they're struggling with their faith, they can look back on those spiritual benchmarks and say, you know what, I remember this, I remember that, I remember growing. It's kind of like what we do, as our kids are getting taller, a lot of times we'll kind of put those height measurements on that door and they go back and look at where they've grown. And it's the same concept with the spiritual growth of being able to go back and look at those. And you can record those in many different ways. And so we'll talk about all of these a little bit more in depth as this series goes along. So that's really what does family discipleship look like. It's about setting that example. It's about having those specific times for family discipleship. It's about taking advantage of the spontaneous times, and it's about celebrating those big wins.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us this week. We'll hopefully see you next week. And we're going to start next week. What we're going to do is we're going to bring some of our favorite resources, some of our favorite books, our favorite podcasts, our favorite even the little small flashcards and stuff that we have that we use with our kids that we found that are extremely helpful when it comes to family discipleship.
Right.
Well, I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you again right here next week.
See you
Bye,
soon.
guys.